Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
At the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, get deals so right, it almost feels wrong. Now's the best time to get that Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus, every new Hyundai comes with America's Best Warranty and 3 years or 36,000 miles of limited complimentary maintenance. Don't think you can get away with all that? Think again. The Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Visit your local Hyundai dealer today. It's a great day for a new Hyundai.
Vitamin Water was born in New York because New Yorkers wanted more. Like more flavor to go with all the flavor. A refreshing drink after climbing 6 flights of stairs to a walk-up apartment or standing in the subway station in 100-degree heat. Focus when I have an 8-hour shift. And Triple X after I was out all night at a club. Call Triple X. Drink Vitamin Water. It's from New York.
Out here, there's no one way of doing things. No unwritten rules. And no shortage of adventure. Because out here, the only requirement is having fun. Bank of America invites kids 6 to 18 to golf with us. For a limited time, sign them up for a free 1-year membership, giving them access to discounted tee times at thousands of courses. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/golf with us. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Restrictions apply. See BofA.com/golf with us for complete details. Copyright 2025 Bank of America Corporation.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Hey everybody, it's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. That is Mike. How are you tonight, Mike?
I am. I'm on pins and needles. Big scoreboard watching night for the Islanders. That's when we're recording this. But also we have a first for our podcast, actually. For Weird Islanders. When we think about Weird Islanders and kind of the theme of the show and the subject matter, the players that we cover, you don't really go to the dynasty years very often because those guys were too good to be on the show. It's not Tommy Soderstrom or anyone like that, right? It's not Victor Kozlov. It's these guys are special, but we still managed to find our way there because wouldn't you know that the dynasty years are a very important part of Islanders history, and this is an Islander history podcast in some way. So I'm excited for our first trip into the late 70s, early 80s here, with a very special guest.
Yes. This is the rarest of all Weird Islanders episodes in that we are going to be talking about the dynasty, and we're going to be focused on one particular player who, as we'll see, maybe the most normal person to have ever played for the Islanders, maybe the most unweird Islander of all time. And he's a 4-time Cup champion, a gold medal winner. He remains as humble and down to earth today as he was back then. He's got a new book out. It's called Ken Morrow, Miracle Gold, 4 Stanley Cups, and a Lifetime of Islanders Hockey. And we are honored and pleased to have on its co-author. His name is Allan Kreda. Allan, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. You're actually somebody I've wanted to get on this show for a very long time. You've covered the Islanders forever for the AP, the New York Times, and a bunch of other outlets. You have watched this team from its Cup dynasty, as a fan to as a writer and covering the team for a number of different places. And as Ken writes in the book, I heard you on Andrew Gross's podcast, I guess a week or so ago, and Ken mentions this in the book. He's had other chances to write a book about his incredible career, but it never seemed like the right time. So what was the password? What was the secret that you used to finally get this man to open up about this? Because again, he's a quiet guy, and I guess he never thought about writing a book before, but you got him to do it. So what's the secret?
Yes, that's a great question. I think it was just great timing. It was right around the 50th anniversary celebration a couple of years ago when the Islanders invited everyone back, alumni-wise, especially the dynasty players were all at UBS together one weekend. And in the course of that weekend, the Hockey News had asked me to write what I could of a sort of overarching story, Q&A, etc., memories from those dynasty players. And in talking to Ken, it just hit me that his relation of relating stories from both the Olympics and then the Dynasty Islanders was so special. This should be put together in a book once and for all. The doubleness, the duality of that story of his life in hockey, and the fact that he's still an Islander just adds to the dimension of it. So I just basically asked him, have you thought of a book? I think the timing really would be great right now. The 45th anniversary of the gold medals coming up. The 45th anniversary of Cup #1 is coming up. We should talk about it. And he said, if you think it's worth the book, okay, we can talk about it. So it was literally, as he has put it out there, the right question asked by the right person at the right time. Right. So I'm fortunate that I have the memory bank of all those games, all those moments. The Olympics in 1980 is a very critical moment in my hockey life. I'm the same age as Pat LaFontaine, so we share this sort of 15 years old, remembering those games. It stays with you. How could it not? So the chance to tell those stories and then put it together with a dynasty run for a one-of-a-kind hockey life couldn't be passed up. Right. And he said yes.
Is that the most Ken Morrow story ever? Where he's like, if you think it's worth telling in a book, like, dude, what are you kidding me?
Right. It can't be any more. There's no one that has this. He's literally the only one in the history of the game to do this. And even if a player were to win a gold and win a cup, it can't possibly be in the same ballpark today. A pro player, this was amateur players and doing what they did and the way they did it. Everything about it was unique. And then to literally win the cup 3 months to the day later and just go on like it was just me doing my job is why he was so successful. Basically, he just went at it that way from day one.
Ken Morrow's now kind of just been part of the furniture, like at Nassau Coliseum and now UBS Arena. Like he's always around. He's always been around. Worked for the team, or still works for the team forever. And I remember the first I don't remember exactly the first time I met him, but I remember like the first time that it hit me who he was. And he was just walking around the concourse at UBS Arena. I was standing, just like trying to stay out of the way of the bathroom lines and the crush of people and whatever. Right. And he kind of just like squeezed by. And my friend who I was with, his dad was like, "Oh, Ken Morrow, like it's pleasure to meet you." And we shook his hand. This is right around when Miracle the movie comes out too.
Right.
And I'm like, that guy won. It was hard to comprehend. I was like, that guy, so that he won the gold medal, the most famous kind of miracle sporting upset in the 20th century.
Right.
And then he won the Stanley Cup 3 months later. Now he's kind of like walking around. But why do we all talk about like Bossy and Smith and Trottier and deify those guys and not Morrow? And my friend's dad kind of looked at me and was just like, yeah, I don't really know. Like it's a much bigger deal than this guy kind of gives off. He's just like walking around, and he is one of the most accomplished winners in the sport. And he's just kept this incredible air of humility and humbleness about him that you should be walking in there and being like, that's one of the most important players in the sport.
Right. He should walk around like he owns the place.
Yeah. It's truly bizarre.
Very humble, no ego. He's just I was just doing my job. I had, I worked hard. I had great teammates. great coaches around me, fortunate moments, right time, right place. He has more crazy stat. He has more overtime goals in the 5-year run to the final that the Islanders had from 80 to 84 than any other Islander. He has 3 in those 5 years, which is ridiculous when you think
Right.
of it on
Right.
the surface. The team record is 4, but Nystrom scored 2 in the late 70s.
Right.
So 3 is the number of those 5 years when they played the most epic games, and every one of them, all the 3 of them, of course, were very important, and he's got the most of all people. So
And he
Crazy.
didn't score. Like that was
Right.
one of the funniest things about that is he saved them all for the playoffs. He had he had one in I guess the 4th year they won the cup. He had 12 points in 19
right,
games, and he had 16 the entire season. Like this,
right,
this is a
Oscars.
yeah,
Right.
it is preposterous. This is one of the most unique careers, not just in Islander history, not just in hockey history, but sporting history. But the way that Morrow kind of carries himself, and also the fact that everybody else, the dynasty gets such a different the when you think of the dynasty, you think of a select group of players, and he becomes second mention, almost like, oh yeah, that guy was on the team, that guy from the Miracle on Ice team,
Right.
he was on the team actually. It's crazy.
Remarkable, and he's the only Islander, of course, who was on the
Mm.
Miracle team. So there were many other players that had longer careers and played for a bunch of teams. If you listed all the teams 1980 Olympians played for, there were quite a few, but only one played as an Islander,
Right.
and he goes and wins the cup 4 times, almost 5 times. So
Yeah.
Right
he
after.
didn't lose anything from somewhere in 1979 that spring until the final game in the 84 run against Edmonton. 5 years without a loss to end your season. So I mean, who does that?
It's unbelievable. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. And you said like he went about it just like he was doing his job. Even in the book, which again I can't recommend enough. It's you got to go out and get it. If you're listening to this, he just talks about this stuff so matter of factly that it's just that's what happened, and that he was just a part of it. Even the goals, we'll get to his overtime goals in a minute. But what I found funny, like you said, I mean, the first half of the book is basically about his growing up, going to Bowling Green, and then the Olympic run, the run to gold, and then the Islanders half sort of starts, and it's all great stuff. Him growing up in Flint, Michigan, and the junior teams, his coach being coached by his dad, and his dad's passing being a very important event in his life, obviously. But he wins the cup. I mean, he wins the gold, and on Sunday, and then by Thursday, he is signing a contract with Bill Torrey on Long Island, and he is at practice. And
right.
then on Saturday, he plays his first game against the Detroit Red Wings. Oddly enough, the team from the area where he grew up.
Right.
And like he doesn't really mention this in the book, but like, does he seem to kind of reflect on how kind of I think it was a whirlwind, he says at the time. He probably didn't reflect on it, but like, does he look back now and think that's kind of crazy that within a week I went from winning a gold medal to playing in the NHL and signing my first contract? Like, there's no time to
No
sit
time.
back. Yeah.
He did sort of, in thinking about it, he's like, well, that it was blurry for all of us. Some of the guys just went home. They went
Right.
from the gold medal day, which was epic. They win the game against Finland, started at 11 a.m. It's done by 2. They've got the gold medal. Then they had to wait for the other game, the later game. The Soviets walloped Sweden to secure the silver, and then the 3 teams are on the ice getting their medals. The U.S. guys, of course, in their sweatsuits, and the other 2 teams in their uniforms. So the Russian guys had to wash them, celebrate all over again. This all happens on the ice at the arena. Then they went to some sort of group party with the families, blurry and crazy and exhausting. And then they all had to get up at the crack of dawn to go to the White House. They had no sleep. There no time to rest really at all. Take it all. They had to leave Lake Placid in a hurry. They get to the White House exhausted. All the pictures we've seen of them in their cowboy hats and the Western outfits they had, very cool looking. They have their moment. They're on the portico with the president, and then the ceremony was over and they went home. Some of the players were at their kitchen tables having dinner the Monday night. Mike Ruzioni said, "What just happened? I'm at my mother's kitchen table in Boston. She's cooking me dinner." It was bizarre. And others were off to their NHL teams in a day or two. Jim Craig goes to the Atlanta Flames. Mark Johnson, like, players went to their teams. And Kenny goes to Long Island. He had to go back home to get some stuff to get to Long Island. Like how much more of a crazy week can you have? And then you're suddenly thrust on the ice with an NHL team, knowing no one. Basically, they had
Right.
never practiced together at all. He's looking down at these blue and orange colors. He does a couple of skates with Al Arbor now watching him, and then he's suddenly on the ice with Dennis Potvin that Saturday afternoon. I don't think it fully registered for him or any of his teammates just how there was no parade. He didn't get to go to the parades. He didn't get to go to any of the celebratory stuff that some of his teammates definitely did do in their hometowns if they weren't heading straight to the NHL. So there was sort of a dichotomy in who got to do what right away. There was some ceremonies even in New York, keys to the city, other events. He wasn't part of it because he was busy with the Islanders, and the other guys were right in New York City. So it's kind of weird. That's weird. And he was just right in there. The Islanders, in a playoff push. They make the trade for Butch Goring because Ken Morrow joins them, because they could afford to trade Dave Lewis. They go on something of a winning streak to get to the playoffs. A lot was expected that year. They had the crushing loss to the Rangers in '79. They had the crushing loss to the Maple Leafs in '78. If they didn't win something in '80, who knows what happens? It may not be a dynasty at all. So how he went from the chaos, the thrill of winning the gold to then the Islanders in less than a week. I don't know to this day if you could really process just what a switcheroo that is.
Right.
He just kept going. He and his wife were living in a hotel. They just went with it. It was a thrill of it all. He was in the NHL, and it was off to the races. And that, I guess it just very organic. Another thing you just would not see in today's world. It just does not happen. The closest thing maybe is a college player finishes up the tournament they're in, or the final of the NCAA, and they're in make it like Cale Makar comes and joins the Colorado Avalanche, and they go on a run. That's the closest thing you can get to it, but even that can't quite equate to what the Olympians went through.
Honestly, not even close when you consider like the seismic political kind of ripple effect and
definitely
kind of the bubbling politicalness of that game, and what it represented in like the greater American culture, and it becomes like a rallying moment for just the country in general. So this guy becomes a national hero for the United States of America. Once again, biggest game perhaps in international sports history, at least for this country.
Right.
And then he's just playing with like dude, I would be, if you walk into that locker room and you say like Dennis Potvin, you've got Mike Bossy, Billy Smith. He walks in. Are these guys just like, what the hell did you just do? Like, I wonder what it'd be like on the other end of that, being like, yeah, we got a guy coming in from the gold medal team. They just beat the Soviets. And then all due respect to Ken Morrow, as we are, but like he walks in as he's not the most physically imposing guy.
Right.
He's kind of like a beanstalk, and he's quiet. And as we keep saying, he's very humble. And he walks into this locker room after doing that. These guys are probably like, do we sure we got the right guy? Like,
I know because even Dennis said, like we were aware of them winning. We knew he was going to join us at some point, but they were sort of so busy playing. The NHL schedule, of course, wasn't stopped in those days for any reason. So the games were happening while the games were happening. So the NHL players were not really plugged into everybody's everything, except maybe just being aware, of course, at the end. But I don't think it didn't sound like he was anyone has studied him. They weren't waiting for this injection of Ken Morrow at that moment. But Bill Torrey knew what he had. Yeah. Al Arbor knew what he had there. So they knew they had a plan, and the teammates, I think, picked up on it reasonably quickly because they just needed, I guess, some injection of something on the blue line.
Yeah.
And Dennis knew it pretty quickly that this guy had something good there. And but at first, sure, it had to be weird. I mean, gold medalist walking in, all these guys, he doesn't know them, they don't know him. It's not like they had a training camp to get figuring out their games. But it worked. Like, it worked seamlessly enough for that trade. That they had to know what they had to make that trade for Butch Goring. That was a gamble they couldn't have afforded if they didn't have a defenseman to replace Dave Lewis. So
Yeah.
it was all aligned that Bill Torrey's vision came true, and Ken was part of it. But he himself said, "I didn't know until the end of the Olympics if I would join the Islanders. I don't know if I'd go to their minor league team for a while." Or like he was ready to do whatever they had him doing.
Right.
But again, in the context of the Olympics, what they had just done, he didn't get to process it in a way that you would today, where they would have 2 months of parades and celebrations, and they wouldn't be playing hockey for the most
Right.
part
Yeah,
right
that's
away
true.
in the pressure cooker of a playoff race, let alone in a
Right.
cup race.
Yeah. One last thing on this kind of point here, because a lot of people forget that that Islanders regular season was not great. They kind of stumbled a lot through it. Potvin missed a lot of it with the thumb
Yep.
injury, which he said was the worst injury of his career.
Yep.
And when they made the trade for Goring, like you said, they really needed an injection of something, because it was just floundering. And like you said, God forbid they hadn't won anything. What would have happened at that point? I was surprised to find out that Morrow's first roommate with the Islanders was Billy Harris.
Mhm.
And as he's telling the book in the story in the book, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, hold on a second. And sure enough, 2 weeks after he gets paired up with Billy Harris as a roommate, Billy Harris gets traded to LA along with Dave Lewis for Goring. And Jim Devellano says exactly what you just said. By the way, I should mention, the book has all of these quotes from people while Ken is telling the story. All these other quotes from people are coming in. Allan has the 1980 guys, Dave Silk, Mike Ruzioni, all these other guys. Jimmy Devellano for the Islanders, a lot of Islanders teammates there as well. And he says without Morrow, they would not have made that trade. So that's people don't really, we think about Goring as the final piece of the puzzle. But I mean, could you make an argument that like Ken Morrow might have been the second final piece of the puzzle? Like you said, without him, they can't make that trade.
Right.
And it never happens.
If there's a precursor award or some
Right.
catalyst award, that's it, because one thing had to happen before the other happened. And definitely Billy Smith said the same when I talked to him. Adding Gord Lane was a big deal earlier in that season. So those three together have their key component aspects. But yeah, the Ken Morrow injection leads to everything else. And there was a school of thought that if they don't add him, they don't make the trade, he doesn't score that goal against the Kings in the first round, the overtime goal that turned that series in the Islanders' favor, maybe they don't win a single series even
I know.
with this group. And if that doesn't happen, they might break them apart. So he's not only the catalyst, but he's a bit of a savior. That he scores the goal that very few fans really remember.
Right.
Against the Kings in a 5-game series, best of 5. And that was no easy task in any year to play anyone in a best of 5. Anything could happen. And Kings had the Triple Crown line. They were no slouch at all. And they split the first 2 games at Nassau Coliseum, and game 3 was in overtime. And Ken Morrow gets the goal that pushes them to an elimination game, and they win that game 6-0 at the Forum in LA. So
tied at 3-all, sudden death overtime. Draw controlled by the Kings, but it went right on net. Lassard made the save. Behind the net for Lewis. He tries to clear, not out. Lane got a drive away from the left point, saved by Lassard. Rebound on the corner. Saint Laurent can't get it out. It's kept in by Howard. Centering pass, top of the slot to Morrow. The drive. Goal! Islanders win! All right! On the drive by Kenny Morrow. It's deflected in, I believe, by Wayne Merrick. And the Islanders have won the overtime game 4-3. What a victory, Bob. What a victory. This is unbelievable. Just great. Beautiful effort by the Islanders. And we've got a couple of guys out there who are pretty happy. They're all bunched up, kissing one another, hugging one another, and I don't blame them. What a victory this is. To come back from a 3-1 deficit against a hard-fighting team like the LA Kings, come back and win this hockey game. Kenny Morrow was denied a goal a few seconds earlier, and he was denied another one, but this time it hit the defenseman's skate. Kenny Morrow was credited with the goal. I think this is the big defenseman, the Olympian, first goal as an Islander.
One of my favorite parts about that dynasty, or the first cup of the dynasty, is that they played the Kings in round one, and all you hear about now is the playoff format and people complaining about it, and the rebuttal is always like, well, it'd be we can't really switch it up too much because the travel would be crazy. It's like the Islanders and Kings are just flying back and forth in 1980. Like, that's just completely
Never heard a word about travel. Like, it was just these matchups were cool. Like, you didn't know who you're going to play, and they just went for it. The games were on sometimes back-to-back nights, and then you travel. So they played the April 8th and 9th that year, traveled on the 10th, played the 11th and 12th. None of the nonsense of today with 3 days off and going to rest, and TV's going to tell you when you're going to play. 4 games in 5 nights. Boom.
Yeah. We're going to get to we're going to talk a little bit more about this LA series in a second, but they had a series against Edmonton that people forget that was in like the first round of the playoffs the next year. It's like, we're just going to fly back and forth to Edmonton for 5 games. Sure, why not?
They had a big exhaust. I mean, 1 day off.
Yeah,
not easy.
Not for these guys now, because they obviously fly charter, but
right.
The airlines back then looked just so much better than they do now. I mean, it looked like you could actually spread out on an airplane. So maybe maybe it was more fun back for them. But that's always one of my favorite anecdotes. Is you look at like the path, and you're like, what were they doing playing in Los Angeles in round one? in a best of 5 of all things.
Right. Yeah. The divisions were all set up weird too.
Also, I mean, the fact that they played the Flyers in the final makes no sense.
Right. Yeah.
At all. That worked out. So.
Yeah. Seriously. But this Kings series actually gets us to our first of 2 weird Islanders for this episode. And Ken talks about him in the book. And he is a player named Alex McKendry, who has only played 46 career games with the Islanders and Flames. He had seasons of 4, 4, and 2 games played with the Islanders. So he played most of his time with Calgary, actually. But in the playoffs that year, he played 6 games and he scored 2 goals, both of them in the clinching game for this series against the LA Kings. It's pretty difficult to find video of Alex McKendry from this time period. I did find a clip of a game that the Checkers played against the U.S. Olympic team, actually. I don't know if Ken Morrow was in the game or not, but McKendry did score a goal and had 40 goals that year, 79-80, for the Indianapolis Checkers, and was an all-star in the CHL.
But the Checkers' Alex McKendry got a power play goal at the 9:04 mark of the second period to tie it at 1. Ivan Vautour gave the Checkers the lead in the same period at 11:51 mark, 2-1. Vautour's 6th of the year, McKendry's 16th. But just under 2 minutes into the third stanza, Christoph tied it when they pulled their goalie. 2-2 the final. The Checkers home to Salt Lake on Saturday.
But his biggest NHL accomplishment was that game against the Kings. I think I had heard of Alex McKendry maybe a little bit, but I mean, Allan, do you have any memories of this guy? He was a big player in the minors. He was an all-star. He had a big junior career.
Yep.
But in terms of NHL, not so much.
Not so much. I mean, that game is the memory. The 2 goals from a guy that really no one had heard of. He had no points in the other regular season games he played for the Islanders together. So let alone, and suddenly he's thrust into a playoff role, and he scores these 2 goals in a clincher in a game that, again, if he doesn't score this, I mean, it was a 6-0 game, but still, someone had to do what they did, and it's him. So, yeah, Ken was saying he's one of those guys. I remember the game, and there's this. We plugged people in who did the job, and he exemplified that. So he said, I was always happy for every single person, every player, every teammate who contributed, because every single incremental step mattered to all of us. So here's another example of someone, and he gets 2 goals in a blowout but clinching game, and he only scored those 2 in the 6 games he did play in that cup run, and that was the only playoff games of his NHL life.
Yeah, and he got his name on the cup, which I guess is all that really matters.
Yeah. All that really matters.
Yeah, it was a first-round pick of the Islanders, 14th overall pick in 76. And that was it. Again, he played 36 games of his NHL career were played with Calgary, and he had a couple of, I guess maybe one okay season there. But if it wasn't for an injury to Mike Bossy,
right,
Alex McKendry never would have played these games and gotten his moment, like you said.
He was drafted in the same year as Ken Morrow, who was drafted 68th overall in the 4th round. And Alex McKendry, 14th overall.
That's pretty funny.
In the first round. So how do you figure things drafts. They're funny, but
Yeah, Mike and I have had our say about the drafts and the
look at
the
lists.
draft grifters. Yeah,
You can pull up any draft year and look at names. You can't, like Randy Carlisle went after Alex McKendry, Barry Melrose.
Huh.
I mean, you looked Mike McEwen, Islander
another
hero, was drafted by the Rangers that year in round 3. So you can find names that are like, wow, how did that? How about Bill Baker was drafted by Montreal in the 3rd round, Olympic teammate with Ken Morrow. So Mike Liute, 56th overall by St. Louis. Crazy.
I played 20 years. Yeah.
So there you go. Kenny again told the story why he was drafted, and Jimmy DeVolano said he saw him play at a random college game in the fall of '75, and so noticed this tall defenseman on Bowling Green playing against a Toronto varsity college team, and noted him, wrote his name down, and said, "I'm drafting him if he's there in '76," and he did, 4th round. So another moment in time that if that didn't happen, he's not drafted. He's not joining them in '80. You know, these things, these like entropy, random atoms coming together to create something to lead to winning. One thing had to happen before 5 other things happened, and they all somehow occurred.
It's amazing. Yeah, and it's so bizarre now to think about guys like an Alex McKendry or the other guys like down the lineup on these dynasty teams, because like to me, I think about David Olstrom in 2013 or someone like these bit part players, and you're like, wow, like yeah, those dynasty teams must have had guys who were black aces and just like came up and played and it must have been it must be a very funny hockey existence, and this is what the show is all about, right? Like Alex McKendry won a Stanley Cup with the Dynasty Islanders, or got his name on the cup, I should say, with the Dynasty Islanders. And he played 6 games in that playoff run, and that's really it. Like his NHL career kind of just evaporates from there, and yet he could say, "Yeah, no, I was part of
the dynasty." I mean, he was traded to Calgary October 9th, 1980, for a 3rd round pick, just jettisoned, not even into the next season. So, talk about a short but glorious bit part. He had it.
Got his name on the cup, and he got to wear 3 different numbers for the Islanders in his 3 stints, which is also got to be some pretty rarefied air. But yeah, Alex McKendry was an interesting dude, and is currently in the Barrie, Ontario Hall of Fame, Sports Hall of Fame. So again, he had a hell of a junior career, but his NHL career basically amounts to those 6 games in the 1980 playoffs, which is pretty wild. And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com. where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly. As you said before, Morrow made a habit out of scoring overtime goals. He had the one against the Kings. That was his first NHL goal. Imagine that. He plays, 18 games for the Islanders in the regular season. They start the playoffs. Guy's first goal is an overtime playoff game winner.
Perfectly in line with the kind of player he was and became.
Right.
Key moments, big goals. And as he put it, his 48-mile-an-hour slap shot makes it impossible.
It's like the perfect seeing eye slap shot somehow that he always managed to get through traffic. He said that was his goal, was to just make sure it gets through.
Right.
Something I wish some current Islanders would take under advisement. But that wasn't his only one. And he made a habit of this over the next 5 years, but his second overtime playoff goal happened in the next year. So this was where they played the Oilers in the quarterfinals. Imagine this again, a first round series, basically, where the Islanders had to play the Oilers.
Oilers.
Fly back and forth. And this is obviously 1981. scores an overtime playoff goal in Game 4. The Islanders win 5-4. I believe they went on to win the series in 6, I think.
6, yep.
Trottier back to the line. Trotman shoots, save, rebound. Another save by Moses. Cruz, they bang away. And Trottier with Wolves down just failed to jam it in. The best scoring chance of the game. Trottier back to the net. Still has it. Trottier trying to come out front. Now he's tied up by Lowe. Trying to center it. It goes loose. He bangs at it again. Gillies has it between his skates. They jam away at it. To the line, not out. Morrow shoots. He scores! Ken Morrow, the overtime hero for the New York Islanders as they win it 5-4. That goal coming at 5:41 of overtime. Well, a tough break for the Edmonton Oilers. They battled hard. But Morrow from the point, but the pressure that the Islanders put on was tremendous here. Trottier again doing awesome work.
And this was where we get to our second Weird Islander of the episode, because Ken talks about him as well. And this guy actually had a little bit more kind of play with the Islanders and actually ended up getting a huge ovation from the Nassau Coliseum crowd while playing for another team. We'll get there in a second. But the second guy is named Hector Marini. In Game 6 against the Oilers, he had a goal and an assist. Islanders clinched there.
Clark Gillies winding up in his own zone. A lead pass for Trottier. He tried to give it back, and Gillies had difficulty controlling it. A quick centering pass, and they score as Hector Marini knocked it in.
Well, Clark Gillies responsible for that. Look at him. He leads the rush, moves the puck to Trottier in the blue line, and Trottier flips it back to him. It goes off Gillies' stick here and into the corner, and watch him make the play. A little bit of a defensive lap by the Oilers in the slot area where they let Marini come in, but
this was a huge moment for Hector Marini. He was drafted 3rd overall. His nickname apparently was the Wrecker, which somebody should check with Joel Recklitz on this. I don't know. He was always been the record that I know of in an Islanders jersey, but he was around for a while. Hector, do you remember him as a player?
I remember him the playoff run, and then of course with New Jersey when
Right.
he joined the Devils in their inaugural season. So he was one of their so-called stars. A name, he had a look. He had the big hair and the mustache, and a colorful guy. So he had some goal scoring ability too. But he was an Islander who again had some bit parts, some role parts, and Al Arbor seemed to know where to employ the young player who was getting his chance, maybe a little shy of the playoff limelight, but Al knew what to do, find these guys a spot, and Hector Marini played 18 games in one of the years. Well, he played 18 total, but he played 9 in 19. I'm looking now, 1981 playoffs. He played 9 of the 18 games, so he was in there. He was part of it.
Yeah.
3 goals, 4 assists, and 3 goals, 6 assists. He outpointed Ken Morrow. I'm looking at the wrong line. He had 3 goals and 6 assists in 9 games in the 81 playoffs. So he was a factor in more than one series.
Yeah.
For them.
He's also he's got about the most. He's got to be the only Islander ever with the first name Hector. But Hector Marini is about as Long Island a name you can get. So he fits in perfectly here. That he's just if back in my bartending days, if someone walked in and someone was like, oh yeah, that's Hector Marini over there, I'd be like, of course it is. He's here on the South Shore of Long Island, and they're like, well, he's played for the Islanders. I'd be like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
he was another of those players that Kenny said he was just happy for someone like that to have a moment to shine in the playoffs, to get his name on the cup, to contribute, score a couple of big goals, big situations. He rooted for them to do well, just as a teammate, as a person. So this all, came together in a moment, in playoff moments, and guys rallied around those players in those moments.
Yeah, because that's an unheard thing, really, or a really undiscussed thing a lot of times when it comes to the Islanders dynasty, is that the depth of those teams had to come through in order for them to do so. Guys like Wayne Merrick, Anders Kaller, Billy Carroll, was a key penalty killer on a lot of those teams. Like, they had to come through and kind of like, sometimes the stars aren't gonna get a score on every shift, and you need guys like that. And sometimes it's a Hector Marini. Like, Wayne Merrick was around for a long time. Hector Marini wasn't. He was around for one season, but he still got his name on the cup, and he still had his moment. And he played 45 games total with the Islanders, had 8 goals, 16 assists over the course of 3 seasons. Has the 3 goals, 6 assists in the playoffs that one year. Again, gets his name on the cup. But he's traded in 1982 to the New Jersey Devils, who at that point, like you said, had just landed. They were just here from Colorado, and they needed all the help they can get. It was Chico Resch and not a whole lot else.
Right.
And in the first season, and I would love to know how this happened. No offense to Hector. I assume he did it. He got there because of his play, but he was the Devils' first ever All-Star game representative.
Right.
At Nassau Coliseum.
Right.
And he got a huge ovation from the crowd when he came out. They remembered him obviously for his effort. So that must have been a kind of a fun thing.
From the New Jersey Devils, number 20, right winger Hector Marini. From the New York Rangers, number 12, left winger Don Maloney.
I was like 8 years old when this happened. So I was 7 years old when this game happened. Were you at that game? Do you remember watching it or?
I remember watching that. Oh, that was 1983. Yeah, that was. I remember watching it. I was still in high school, so it was. The Islanders getting the All-Star game. That was quirky, and just right in the middle of the cup run, and then the Devils with this rookie team, kind of wacky. They had a strange amalgamation of players in the, of course, any expansion team would.
Right.
So, right, and here's the ex-Islander, now Devil. I'm sure a crowd favorite for the playoff run with the hair and just the personality that went with it. So, hard-nosed kind of player. I think he probably would have been a good Islander if there was room for him over time. He would have probably fit in if there had been a less star-studded forward lineup.
Right.
But yeah, fans must have seen something in him and made sure he got the ovation
Right.
that night.
Yeah, hard nosed is a good way to describe him because every video of him on YouTube is of him in a fight with somebody. So when that's the case, that dude was a tough customer. And he eventually, like I said, the trade though, what's funny is that the 4th round pick the Islanders got back for Hector Marini ended up being used on Mikko Makela of all people.
Not bad.
The late 80s All-Star there for the Islanders. And unfortunately in 85, Marini had a terrible eye injury. And ended up having to have the eye removed, which is really a terrible, shocking thing. And he later regretted not wearing a visor. So
yeah, the lack of a visor. Yeah.
Right.
I was just pulling up the roster from the 83 All-Star game. So he was teammates with Dennis, with Brian Trottier, with Bossy, with Dave Langevin. So that was must have been quite a night for him to be
seriously.
back with those guys on the Coliseum ice, coached by Al Arbor, of course, the cup-winning coach, and there he was. Don Maloney, I believe, was the MVP of that game, or was it the next year?
No, that was the Gretzky year.
That was the Gretzky year, right? Don Maloney the following year in New Jersey,
right. Yeah,
was the MVP,
right? Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the next year, 84.
That's funny. Yeah, Gretzky stole that from John Garrett was going to win it, and then Gretzky scored 1 million goals, whatever.
Scored 4. Yep. It was 8-3, 9-3. Wow.
Yeah, Hector Marini, our second and final Weird Islander, and again, he's a guy I've kind of wanted to talk about for a while. So I'm glad you saw him play because, as we've been saying this whole time, this era was not rife with these guys. Like this lineup was mostly set in stone,
set in total stone. And here you have these guys in the playoffs who are making a mark, not at all in the regular season of any note, but in the playoffs, they're in the moment. They're scoring big goals in big games.
Yeah,
just the pressure must have been immense because you certainly didn't want to screw anything up and inject it in. And here he's scoring goals against the Oilers, and that series too. Ken talked about how critical those series. Of course, the Islanders never let any team get to a game 7 in any single series of the 5-year run. A couple of game 5s, but no 7s. It just showed how hard they work to keep teams from a chance to win a series. And Ken said, with Edmonton, you didn't want to give them any breathing room at all. So we had to get it done in less if we could. And Hector Marini scoring big goals helped us do that. So another reason why he and his teammates were very grateful for that kind of contribution from someone that was not part of it so much in the regular season, but a big part of it in the playoffs.
I think it's that's like a feature of the dynasty that maybe gets overlooked a little bit or just not talked about is because you hear it from Butch too, like on broadcast when from time to time like a name gets brought up or something, and he'll kind of pay homage to them, and that these guys were I feel they were so happy they knew who the stars were, right? Like they knew who was driving the bus, right? But they were really happy to pick up guys along the way, and that they got to be a part of something really special and be like, yep. Hector Marini was a part of it. Alex McKendry was absolutely a part of it, and they kind of like glow. And I feel like they would almost rather talk about these kind of characters than, oh yeah, Mike Bossy was ridiculously good, or Brian Trottier was awesome, and Billy Smith was crazy. Like they'd be like, oh no, but I've got all the time in the world for Hector Marini. That guy was a true character.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he played, I'm just looking again, 14 games, regular season, 80-81, 9 playoff, and then just a handful the next year, another 30, and it was only 30. So I don't know what he must have been hurt most of that year because he wasn't in the minors either. So just 30 games, 4 goals, 9 assists, and then joined the Devils where he had his best NHL season, 17 goals, 45 points, 105 penalty minutes. So he was a good part of a very not good Devils team, but fun Devils team.
Yeah,
that first year.
That's a 1980s stat line if I ever heard one. When you get to 109 penalty minutes after all those goals, you're like, that guy played in the 80s.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, the poor Devils. That was not like today's stacked expansion teams that have real chances. I mean, that team was 17 wins, 48 points, tough.
Right.
Merlin Malinowski, I think, was their best player or one of them. There's a name.
Yeah, right. Seriously. And of course, Chico, who was the first face of the Devils and actually has a lot of great quotes in the book, which is great too. I always love hearing from Chico.
Yeah, Chico was tremendous because goalies really love Ken, and Chico bonded with him right away and just loved the way he played. I think Ken was that dream defenseman that didn't screen anybody, cleared the crease. He was big. He was clean. He didn't take penalties and cause more angst. So he just did the job and cleared the way. So Chico loved him. And of course we get Chico talking. There's a book in each sit down. So Chico's the best.
Just an amazing person. Right. So another thing goalies like is when they have goals and empty net goals in particular, because the other team has pulled their goalie. And in another series against the Oilers, which of course is a little bit more important than the first round series, the 1983 Cup final, again, like you said, the goal was to not let the Oilers up off the mat at all. Gretzky had no goals in this series.
Right.
And Morrow scores what has to be, and I don't remember them all, I'm not going to look them all up, has to be the most important empty net goal in Islanders history, right? They're clinging to a 3-2 lead in game 4. The Oilers are pressing. Obviously, it's Curry and it's Messier and Anderson and all these guys. And he gets the puck after it bounces around a little bit, skates up to center ice. He's talked about this in the book. He actually clearly remembers the play. He wanted to get past the red line because he didn't want to risk an icing. And he just, from basically center ice, just bullseye, dead center of the net. 4-2 Islanders. There's like a minute and a half or something left. Place is going absolutely ballistic.
Gretzky back to the net. Morrow ties him up, and here's Pinelli clearing it to Nystrom. Nystrom unable to get it out of his own end of the ice with a minute 22 left in regulation time. Gretzky from back of the goal, putting on pressure now, centers the puck, it's broken up. Hotman can't clear it out. Morrow gets a stick on it. Kenny Morrow carries it over center ice, shoots into an empty net, he scores! Kenny Morrow! They weren't the limit. They gambled everything. The Edmonton Oilers knew they had to do it. And when you do, you leave yourself open. All players for Edmonton were deep in the Islanders' end of the ice. And away they came. The sorrow is showing on Edmonton. Anderson. They gave it a good try. But Ken Morrow, as he's done so often, playing his position perfectly, stole the puck. He's tired. He's trying to get out of the end. He gains the red line and then lets it fly right in the middle of the net. Dead center. Ken Morrow's shot. His 5th goal of the playoffs has put the game almost out of reach of the Edmonton Oilers. A minute and 9 seconds as Ken Morrow lets fly to the open net, and it's in the net. 4-2 now for the New York Islanders.
Like, again, this is almost the perfect encapsulation of Ken Morrow, the player. He is defensively responsible. He understands the situation. He doesn't want to make a mistake. And so he just calmly outskates somebody with his long legs, gets to where he needs to be, and puts it in. He talks too, like, he's going back and watching these clips on YouTube. Did you watch these clips with him? And like, what was his sort of response now and kind of going back and watching stuff like this that he probably hasn't watched in 30 years?
Yes, that's a great question, because that was part of my methodology, was to watch with him as much as we could together. Like, let's pick a game, pick a series, and let's watch it, at least the end of the game, like key moments, and what do you remember? And he had a tremendous memory of details and what led to a play, what transpired in the seconds leading up to a big play. And so once we got him going, once we talked, it got even better. And I happened to start with 83. I said, let's just start with, pick a moment that really stands out. Let's go to the empty net goal and let's like build around that. Let's talk about it and everything leading up to it, and the chaos on the ice and the frenzy and the pressure. And, you know, the 4th cup was right there for you guys to win at home again. It would be their 3rd cup at home. They desperately did not want to go back to Edmonton with that team. They were up 3-0, but you don't give that team any breathing room at all. So the tension in the building, it was hot, of course. It's late in May. You know, the whole drill, and the Dennis Potvin kind of overskates the puck with Gretzky in the zone. He might get one more shot, and then suddenly there's Morrow with the puck on his stick, like you said, calmly skating up, and his only thought was, let me just get over the red line. And he said he didn't even quite realize it was an empty net. He just wanted to get out of harm's way, and he had to ice it, and he fires it straight through the legs with Dave Lumley. It goes right in, and of course the place goes bonkers. But the flip side story is, apparently to this day, Bobby Nystrom still miffed that Ken Morrow didn't pass him the puck for the easy empty net. The win. Did not pass. Kenny said he didn't realize he was even to his right. John Tonelli was to the left. Kenny was looking straight ahead only. You know, focus. The puck's in. It's cemented. The cup is theirs again. And they have the group hug where, if you watch it on YouTube, you clearly see him say, I love you guys, multiple times. Yeah. And I thought, when he told me that story, it was such a perfect way to leap off into all these cup stories. Right. How can you encapsulate a group of people better than saying, I love you guys? And that's how they all felt. Like, when I told them each about it, they said, oh yeah, that's us. Like, that was us. We did love each other. That hug meant everything. A 4th cup, unbelievable. And to have Kenny score the cincher, the clincher, however you want to put it, the cementer, perfect. And he actually scored 2 empty net goals in that series. He scored one in game 1. So he's the only NHL player that has 2 empty net goals in the same cup winning series in NHL history. There's another wacky stat of really all funny. The years of all the games in cup final history. There was never a player that scored 2 empty netters in the same winning series.
That's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
It's kind of unbelievable.
And it's a defenseman of all people. It's a defenseman.
Right. Yeah.
So we figured that one. I was like, that can't be right, but we figured it out. It's a statistical help checking that.
Right.
The great Eric Hornick. And so I love numbers like that, little known tidbits of statistical minutia. And there it is. Wow. He's got multiple goal scoring records in big playoff games. He only scored 11 though in 127 playoff games, but they seem to all be big.
Right. Well, he scored 11 goals in 127 playoff games, but he had 17 in
Right.
550 regular season games.
Yeah.
So, like Mike
Right.
was said before, he saved it for the playoffs. It's kind of funny that the percentage wise, it's
It's a
hilarious.
tripling of efficiency ratio there.
Right. Right.
Again, unexplainable really to the average
That's
human.
Right. Yeah. Seriously. Well, he's definitely not the average human. Ken Morrow. So yeah, to explain Ken Morrow to another somebody who's not Ken Morrow or didn't see Ken Morrow is probably pretty tough.
And I also thought it was fascinating how he described a sweep because fans look at a sweep, oh, that was easy. You look at the numbers now, you look back, oh, they must have had their way with them. It couldn't have been as tough as a 6 or 7 game series. Well, each game was a battle. The Oilers were not happy after losing previous years. They were very young, but they were very hungry. And, they used the rage in 84 finally to win one. But they had gone through what the Islanders had gone through by losing multiple years. So 83 was an embarrassment to them to lose 4 straight. But none of it was easy. And the guys knew they lost game 4 and gave Edmonton a chance to win game 5. They'd probably be back for game 6. And then all bets are off. So there was no giving them any life at all, even in a 3-0 up in game 4. It was like no sympathy, nothing. We're winning this game. We're not giving them anything to take home with them.
One of my favorite part about the clip of the empty net goal is the Coliseum. I've been inside the Coliseum for obviously moments that aren't as seminal as this, but to me at least they are, like Beauvillier's goal, etc. You could take this crowd and you could just time travel them to 2021, and it's the same exact thing. It's just there's not beers coming down on the ice or anything or like that, but there's ticker tape falling, people on shoulders, like people falling over each other because there's just no space and the noise is being held in. It's so funny to watch these moments.
That's the beauty of it, right? The sheer frenzy, the physical insanity of the space, how loud it was, the celebration of a championship again. And it wasn't as orchestrated as today, obviously, with the cup on the ice and everybody gets a scarf and all kinds of stuff. It was much quicker, but still, it had to be epic and as loud could be. And these guys, just kept winning and winning and winning some more. And there had to be a surreality to it by that 4th one. Like, I can't believe we did this again.
Yeah.
And yet they found a way to find a way every time.
My favorite part of the clip that I found of this is they cut immediately after that goal to the inside of Dr. Generosity's, the bar that I guess was at the Marriott. And that place is packed to the gills too. It's almost like the Coliseum, just without the rink. Like, it's people on top of each other, people standing on tables, and chairs and going crazy. And
it had to be crazy stuff. Just special.
Yeah. And like I've always said, this was when, like, I grew up, I was alive when this, but I was really little. And so I kind of grew up in the post dynasty era. And like, the Islanders were just part of the community. Like, this was just everybody was a fan. Everybody knew what was going on. Everybody just kind of collectively enjoyed this team of guys doing this crazy stuff, including
going to watch my neighbor Hector Marini play.
Right. Yeah.
That was part of the beauty, right? The family aspect of this team and the guys living there, making their lives there. How many of them?
Yeah.
The post careers there, and just Clark Gillies, Nystrom staying there, Pat LaFontaine, guys who stayed there beyond it, all very special. So Ken definitely has fond memories of the time spent on Long Island.
He shouts out his neighbors that he lived here and like the barbecues that they went to and stuff. So it's really like he came home from a series and like people were blaring like marching band music
in the morning. Yeah, that kind of thing. Beautiful, right?
Yeah, it's great stuff.
So that it brought up all these stories and he loved telling them. He's like, oh, that's funny. Should we put that in? It's like, yeah, like put it all in. It's all fun, happy stuff. Like people love details. So readers get a kick out of, wow, that's cool. That's a very family type of thing to do on the block party atmosphere.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
When that was the only road one. So they flew back from Vancouver exhausted and happy, and yet drives in at dawn, and neighbors are blaring "God Bless America," John Philip Sousa, and everybody was out there having a beer at 7 a.m. I'm sure.
That's funny.
Why not
celebrate? Right.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Llévate más de lo que esperas todos los días con el nuevo McValue en McDonald's. Ahora puedes comprar uno y sumarle otro por $1. Así que cuando tu equipo favorito enfrente a sus rivales, enfrenta tus antojos con $5 Meal Deals. Y si estás corriendo para alcanzar el desayuno, corre al app para llevarte ofertas antes del cutoff. Tú decides, y con McValue, tu decisión siempre rinde más. Precios y participación pueden variar. BOGO $1 válido para un producto de igual o menor valor. Debe estar registrado en Rewards para ofertas en el app.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Cadillac Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Cadillac.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
But yeah, no, the details again in the book are great, and the quotes you get from people are great. And one of the other funny things I found throughout the book is that the 1980 guys keep showing up, because a lot of them went to the NHL and a lot of them played against the Islanders during this era. And so you have guys like Dave Silk, Rob McClanahan, who were with the Rangers, Mark Johnson, who you mentioned before, and Jack O'Callahan were with the Devils. Dave Christian, Brock Nelson's uncle, was with the Capitals. And of course, Herb Brooks coached the Rangers for a while. Right. And one funny story I found was when Silk was with the Rangers, they were doing a skate around and he sees Morrow and he's like, "Hey, Mo." And Morrow won't say anything. Finally, like, hey, what's going on? He's like, and Morrow says, "Don't talk to me. We don't talk to the other team."
Isn't that funny? Yeah. Love that. Just the tiny aside, like, says it all in one paragraph. You get the flavor of all business. We're not friends on the ice now.
Right.
It's at Madison Square Garden where the fans were insane, of course, booing the Islanders, and Ken's feeding into that energy now. But he had 4 buddies on the Rangers at one point, including Mark Pavlich and Herb Brooks. I mean, that's just kind of weird math. 4 Olympic teammates and Herb Brooks, and got to tune that out and play your game. So
I
always thought that was kind of wacky energy in all those Ranger Islander games in the early 80s.
And obviously he scores an enormous goal in the drive for 5 to keep the Islanders going in the division semifinals. And by that point, George McPhee was on that team, who he had played with at Bowling Green, who was a rookie that year.
Yes.
And this is the goal that a lot of the Rangers you talked to in the book say was like just backbreaking and heartbreaking for them. And they just never really got over it. And Barry Beck at one point says, "I thought him saying, the Rangers were the second best team of the 80s, including the Oilers. The Islanders were strong. We needed a little bit of luck to beat them. They had a lot of Hall of Famers and a great coach as well."
Yeah.
Like, when you talk to them, does that feel like a little bit of sort of coping after the psychological damage that these playoff losses did? Because we as Islanders fans talk about 78 and 79, those losses. These seem to be just as devastating to the Rangers, but they never got the payoff. They never won the cup after
They never did. And I think they inherently knew they had something special, that Herb was getting them to play better and better as they went along in the playoffs. And they knew if they could beat the Islanders, they had a chance at the cup. 82, 83, and definitely 84. They didn't quite have the goaltending the Islanders did, but no other team really did either. So 84 probably would have been pretty easy for the Rangers to win over the Caps next. The Montreal, like, would have matched up well. Like, they might have been right there in the final with the 84 Oilers. Who knows how that would have played out. And 83 too, the Rangers had Mio. Then they took the Islanders to 6. 82, they took them to 6. Steve Weeks. So they had funky goalies, but not Billy Smith. And they had the offensive firepower. They had the defensive strength. They had weapons. They just could not. They gave the Islanders the toughest run. All the Islander guys said the Rangers were our toughest opponent in the Cup collectively. Not 81 was not that. It was a sweep, but 82, Herb's first year, 6 games, could have gone either way. 83, even tougher Ranger team. And 84, they had added Pierre LaRouche. They had Anders Hedberg still scoring goals. They had Pavlich. They had guys. They had weapons all over the place. And if Barry Beck didn't get hurt in Game 3 and suffer a separated shoulder in a basically straight-on collision with Pat Flatley, who knows? Because that was the missing piece. They just couldn't quite compete in the last couple of games. They had a chance to win the series in Game 4 at the Garden. Couldn't do it. Losing the Garden, I mean, that would have been another 79 if they had ended the dynasty at the Garden.
Yeah.
In Game 4 in 84. And then in Game 5, no Barry Beck in Game 5. Ron Gresham is pressed into action. They only get to overtime in a tight game with the somewhat disputed Don Maloney high stick goal.
Right.
That,
seconds, yeah.
Wasn't called today. It would have been a 27-minute analysis. I'd probably still be talking about it. But I asked Don Maloney about it. I really wanted his take on that moment. And he said, it was a goal. Of course, it was a goal when I scored it as a Ranger. But later when I became an Island executive, I wasn't so sure. So laughing. But, the goal was surreal. Like the game was over. And suddenly it was tied, and the Islanders needed another miracle to move on. And those 9 minutes of overtime, everyone I talked to said that was the most intense, epic, breathtaking, heart in your throat. Like everything was happening. The Rangers had 2 golden opportunities to win that game. Mikko Leninen, puck hops over his stick. Bob Brook had Billy Smith. He had him. He just made the save. Had right place, right time, right foot in the right place, and the puck goes back the other way, and it's somehow on Ken Morrow's stick and past Glenn Hanlon.
Here comes Crochet over the line to Bossy. Bossy trying to get it back, and the Rangers come out. Can you believe this action in overtime in the 5th game? Maloney in front. Billy Smith. Rob Brook robbed him. I tell you, robbed him. Bossy played it in. That's Tonelli going after it. Into the corner, Patey, Rosted, Sutter! Picked out by Glenn Hanlon. Shot, score! The Islanders have done it! The Islanders, Morrow, they have won it in overtime. 3-2, it's over. And the march for the Islanders continues in 84.
Again, if the Rangers had ended the dynasty on the Coliseum ice, that would have been epic. So, and Herb Brooks doing it, there was something there. And Barry Beck had to know he was the conscience of that Ranger team. And I think they had wished they had the chance to go up against the Oilers deep down. I think that would have proven if they had really how what it takes. I don't know if they had won that series or any series, but it would have been interesting because I think Herb just knew what to do as teams got into more pressure games, and he had stuff ready. The Rangers moved on that we probably didn't even employ yet, but they just could not solve the Islanders. Same thing. One of the years it was Dave Langevin scoring a big goal to clinch a Game 6 at the Garden. Like there was always a moment, a goal, a something to end it, and not even let the Rangers get to a 7 with the chance to eliminate them. So to get to the Game 5 was their chance, and they had it, and then they lost it, and then it was never the same. Dave Maloney, Anders Hedberg, Beck, all of them said that was the toughest loss of their careers.
Man.
Yeah,
it's hard to just kind of comprehend and fathom it as a fan who was born 7 years after 83 and then just basically watched the Islanders limp against
Yeah,
for my entire life. And then you hear, oh, like, yeah, the Rangers just couldn't figure him out. I'm like, well, must have been nice because I,
Seriously.
I mean, it was just one way. It was so epic between the two teams. I mean, they played in the playoffs 79, 81, 82, 83, and 84. And every one of those series was amazing that they were together again. But to have it happen 5 times in 6 years, only 80 did they not meet. 79 was the big upset. 81, the Rangers had a losing record, but beat 2 better teams in St. Louis and the Kings. Couldn't match up, but the other 3 again were so close. So the fact that they just met 5 times in 6 years, and in the 40 years now since then,
Yeah, I
know. So yeah, that tells you. I mean, it's harder, of course, to meet up in the playoffs now, but fans kind of expected it, and it's really hard to have the younger generations understand just how intense it was, because 94 was not much. 90 was something of a series, but the Rangers win in 5, and Pat LaFontaine was hurt in the first game. So, we haven't had an epic Islander Ranger in way too long.
Yeah.
The
fans deserve it on both sides for that to finally happen.
Man, I don't know if I would be able to take it.
Me too, yeah.
I have a friend of mine whose dad is just a massive Ranger fan, and I would run into him every now and then, and he would just be like, "You don't." I would be complaining about how the Islanders are just cursed by the hockey gods, and he'd say, "You have no idea how hard it was for me to live my life from 1980 to 1984," and he's like, I was in high school and college at the time, and all my friends were Islander fans. He's like, it was miserable. I still am owed something from that. He's like 94 wasn't enough, and I was like, yeah.
I understand this, right? Because it was hard year in and year out, and if you're a Ranger fan, you knew you had something special, but not enough special. And once it goes. And it's hard to accept even decades later. When you talk to these guys, you can hear it in their voice, or hear it in just what they're writing back to you in texts. Like, if only. Dave Maloney said he saw the puck on Mikko Lenin's stick. He was about to score the goal. He was at the point. He saw it, and it just sort of hopped over. and I reached Mikko Lenin, and I talked to him for the book too. One of the last interviews before we had to finish the edit, and he, of course, was playing for Team Finland against the U.S. in the gold medal game. There's another concentric circle of connection against Herb Brooks. And then Herb Brooks liked him so much, he made him a Ranger, brought him over, played some big games for them. He has a record, NHL record, 6 assists in a playoff game. That's an NHL record that only Wayne Gretzky has matched.
Wow.
So, of all people, here's this ex-Finnish star with a chance to end the dynasty for Herb Brooks against Ken Morrow. I mean, all that. And the game of inches hops over his stick in that. If you watch the highlights of that overtime, you see these moments, and I think the Ranger fans will cringe every single time, because it was so close. And when you're watching it live, you're just breathless with the game. But when you watch it 40 years later, it hurts more.
Right. There's a great line in the book, and I think it's Ken himself who tells the story about how he had met Rod Gilbert.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was later, a couple of years after that. And he told the story that Rod Gilbert, we've talked about before, is one of the nicest and classiest dudes you could ever have possibly met. It's just a great guy. And he apparently told Morrow, like, the Islanders had all these scores: Bossy, Trottier, Gillies, Dennis Potvin. Who scores to beat us? Ken Morrow. That's how intense this was. We had Rod Gilbert mad all these years later. It was Ken Morrow, of all people, to do this. Like, what does Ken see as his Islanders legacy? Like, is it these kinds of playoff moments? Is it the steadiness? Is it just kind of being in the right place at the right time? Like, does he have an overarching kind of feel about what his stamp on this team is?
My sense is it's all of that in a totality. He just sort of right place, right time, product of hard work. I was lucky. I worked hard, and moments came to me. He jokes the only reason he'd ever be on the ice with those guys in a power play situation would be to take the faceoff from the opposite zone. And here he is, scoring in overtime, and he's got Gillies and Bossy and Potvin and Trottier on the ice with him. Like, it makes no logical sense, but it does, because he was that ballast, that key player on the ice in key situations defensively, who would wind up at the other end offensively. And he said, yeah, it is kind of stunning to think how much winning I did those first 4 years and almost 5 years. But the second half of his career was much more frustrating.
Right.
It was not even comparable in any way. The only real great moment was the Easter epic. So it was
Right.
not an easy second half.
Yeah.
There is balance to the story, and I think the glory of those 5 years is so amazing that he just looks at it as I did the right things the right way and was rewarded as we all were. But
Yeah.
the tide turned, in '84 and he had the knee surgery and it wasn't so easy after, but in the totality of it, it's an unbelievable career.
Yeah.
Unbelievable career, worthy of the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, should be worthy of the Hockey Hall of Fame. And a lot of fans have spoken about how his numbers should be raised at UBS. And right next to Dennis Potvin's number 5 should be Kenny Morrow's number 6. I've heard that a lot.
Makes sense to me. For
I
sure.
think so too. I mean, it's almost like a weird thing that's not, because I feel like if you just sat down with somebody and explained who he was, they'd be like, well, why isn't his number retired?
Right.
He won 4 Stanley Cups and
the gold
medal. It doesn't matter if he scored 17 goals in his career or whatever it is. I think he scored some huge goals too. So yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know why it's not actually. Like, it would be an interesting explanation to get from whoever decides these things, which I don't really know if there's a cavalcade that does. I just think it's a conclave that does, I should say. I think it's
I feel like there's
owns
an
the team at
awareness
the
of
time.
him more. Something's been raised for Kenny in the course of the book, so I hope there's some greater sense of it should be, because he's such a key component to the winning. And to a man, his teammates on both winning squads said the same thing. We needed a guy like him back there doing what he did. Goalies said it, defensive partners said it, forwards said it, coaches said it. It's all part of it. And every team needs that player to win.
Just a couple more for you, Allan. We really appreciate you staying
sure.
on with us. This has been a lot of fun. And again, the book is absolutely terrific. Ken Morrow, Miracle Gold, 4 Stanley Cups, and a lifetime of Islanders hockey. And one of these last ones also involves the Rangers. And it's actually probably one of the most stunning things in the book. I know I had never heard this story, and you talked about this with Andrew Gross as well. So, like you said, after they lost in the finals to the Oilers, it was kind of rough for Morrow in particular. A lot of knee issues. He had his knee drained basically after every game. He found the climb up the stairs to the Coliseum harder and harder after every game. And in summer of 1989, he's 32, but his contract is run out, and the Islanders aren't going to re-sign him. And he's still young. Again, it's only 32. And he gets a call from Neil Smith, of all people, who was the GM of the Rangers at the time, and actually brings him in for a tryout. And he said he cried on his way up to Rye, New York, because it just didn't feel right. He ended up not passing the physical, and he ended up getting actually his first coaching job with a team that the Rangers kind of control. His contract was with the Flint Sprints back in his hometown.
Right.
So not with the Rangers. And he ended up coaching a young goalie named Mike Richter.
Mike Richter, of all people. Yeah.
I know. But was there a sense that he actually would, had he been healthy enough and could have played, that he actually would have signed with the Rangers? Because that would have been really weird.
That would have been weird. That would have been as weird could be. I'm not sure he fully was sort of ready for it. I think he just was taking the chance to see what could be, and he wasn't quite ready to be done. He had that 88-89 year was a tough one. He only played 34 games, and the Islanders had a coaching change again, and Al Arbour was back again. So Al Arbour, they only played Kenny the very last game. He gave him the goodbye game at the Coliseum. I don't know, who would have even thought of that as a goodbye game for such an important player, but it was the end of a not happy season, and he gets that last game in spring of '89, and then what do I do? Knee injuries. He had so many, and Neil, who had Islander history, of course, invites him on the Rangers side, and then he just couldn't physically. He said the doctors just couldn't allow me to take part even in pulling. He didn't even put on the sweater and take part in anything official. So he was never a Ranger per se, but he was like literally, he said, driving to Rye was so out of body. What am I doing? I bleed Islander blue and orange. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Right.
But at 32, it was young by today's standards,
Mm.
and it wasn't ready to be done. And the team hadn't made the playoffs in '89. It was a frustrating thing. What a difference from the first year to the last year
Right.
as an Islander. And knee injuries. What do I do now? And he has this chance of maybe being a Ranger. So I'm sure to keep playing. He might have. That would have been a strange sight
Mm.
for everyone involved. That was
Yeah,
Neil
seriously.
taking over the Rangers the first time. So that was a new Ranger era after the Phil Esposito, Michel Bergeron era. So there
Mm.
was, yeah, that would have been something. I don't know if the fans had comprehended that, even if it really made news. I think
Mm.
he just quietly tried camp, it didn't work. I'm not even sure there were many stories on that Ken Morrow has retired, because it wasn't that sort of done that way back then.
Mm. Yeah.
Officially announcing through the Players Association kind of thing. So
Mm. Yeah.
yeah, it just ended, and it was a now what moment, and that's when Neil offered him this coaching possibility, which he took,
Mm.
kept him in the game, and back home to Flint for 1 year, which was it was a Ranger affiliated team, but it was really an independent
Mm.
minor league team. It wasn't like an AHL affiliate. It was an independent
Mm.
league affiliate in Flint for that 1 year, and happened to have Richter,
Yeah.
who said, "Hey, Kenny was amazing to have in the room with us. So impactful to have him there, talking to us, talking to the defenseman, talking to the goalie." So there's another layer of Ranger Islander
Mm.
connection that I wasn't aware of. Then you get someone talking like Mike Richter, and he's got one
Mm.
story after another. So grateful to be part of the book, and
Mm.
Kenny's so grateful to hear these stories that he never heard before or didn't hear it at length. So
Right.
layers upon layers,
Yeah.
fascinating to me, because
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. But yeah,
Yeah.
the seeing Ken Morrow in a number 6 Ranger jersey on the garden ice, I don't know, it would have been
That would
as weird or weirder than Dennis Potvin's almost foray with Mike Keenan some
Right.
years later. The
Yeah.
almost number 5 skating out, which of course Denny jokes he should have just done it once in one exhibition game just to see the crowd reaction, but just for that. But
Right.
I think there's something pure and really nice to being with one team for your whole career, however long that career lasts.
Right.
It's meaningful. It's crystallizing one way with one team. No one can ever take that away, and there's a beauty to it.
Mm.
So, and he and Denny share that, career
Right.
Islanders and partners for so long, and it's a big reason why I wanted Denny to write the forward for the book, because he had an insight that a Hall of Famer can have,
Yeah.
and the appreciation between the two of them is huge,
Yeah.
and great friends forever. So I was honored to include Denny as well.
That's
How can
great.
you not include a Hall of Famer?
It just goes to show you too the difference between Potvin and Morrow, as well as they got along on the ice, and as much as they've been friends. One guy would love to do something for just the shock value of it, and the other guy is like in tears, like, no, I can't do
Right,
this. Like,
right.
there's no way I'm not doing this. Was there like one thing in the book that really surprised you? I mean, again, this wasn't really a publicized thing, but was there one story or one thing that really kind of took you back and were like, oh
Uh,
my god, I had no idea?
I was surprised with the Olympic wise how
Hmm.
little the players seem to know about how much the country and people overall were celebrating and going crazy for these games. I mean, they were excited they were winning. They were obviously excited they beat the Soviets, but they didn't have a sense, of course, in a world without Twitter and Instagram, decades and decades early. Herb Brooks had totally shielded the team, and they were in a bubble there. They had no outside news at all, really, barely. Radios, like no newspapers, nothing. So they didn't have a sense until the White House day just how maniacal the country was behind them, and it was so ordinary. Another win, another game. McKenny, after they beat the Soviets, went back to his dorm room and iced his shoulder because they had a practice the next day, and they had another game to play. So
Wow.
there was no partying. There might have been some partying, sort of by some of the guys, but nothing like
Right.
would be
Organized
today.
and
And I
yeah.
think it was surprising just how cloistered they were, just how little they knew about the overall feeling of the country. And when they finally saw the flags and the people lining streets and
That's
all
crazy.
the celebration, that's when they knew. So yeah, that surprised me, the level of how that was, and trying to sort of figure out how 1980 felt when
Mm.
your brain is so used to today's world where
Right.
everything's everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
He and his teammates said, "I don't know if we would have been able to do what we did in today's
Mm.
social media world. It would have been too much.
Yeah,
It
I could
just would
see
have
that.
been insane,
Right.
and we wouldn't have been able to breathe." So
Mm.
that overall feeling of just play your game and keep playing your game, and Herb knew what he had and didn't
Right.
want them off track. So yeah, that surprised me, and it came
Wow.
a lot of the Herbie sayings we talked about, and I like them all because I've always been fascinated with Herb Brooks. But my favorite was plan your work and work your plan, and that's so easy to think about as a concept, and that's exactly what he did with these players, and
Right.
that's what he was doing with the Rangers too. He brought that
Yeah.
to the NHL. He was a revolutionary coach
Yeah.
with European style and speed, and players that did things you didn't see before. He brought the Soviets game. He brought the Czechs game. He had Ray
Mm.
Ruotsalainen flying around scoring goals like crazy.
Mm.
Rangers never had a defenseman like that. So he was a man before his time, and that
Right.
also came through in the book, that a lot of what Herb espoused as a coach for the Olympic team and for the Rangers was a lot of what you see in the game in 2025.
Yeah, like the shootouts and the
Yeah.
overtime play, like that was really cool too. Yeah, yeah. No, a real
All of that.
visionary.
So
Yeah.
that's something like you wouldn't have expected if you wrote the book in
Right.
1993. That wouldn't have come across as much as today. So
Right.
there's
Yeah.
something to be said for waiting somehow decades to retell a story.
No, it worked out beautifully. Again, the book is fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. I do a series at our Patreon called Dan's Islanders Book Club, and I always read a book every month about either an Islander or about the Islanders, or sort of tangentially related to the Islanders of the NHL. And there's not a ton of them out there that are like,
Right.
specifically about the Islanders. And so when I saw this, I immediately knew I was going to read it, and I got more excited about it as it started coming out. And so you've been on this like kind of tour. Ken's been on this tour, talking about it, and it's really, really terrific. And as I was saying to you before we came on, like, it's not just about him. I mean, not that that's not enough. It would have been perfect if it was just about him, but like, it's really a history of the Islanders' entire Cup run, which is like a really, that's a very specific time, but like the way he talks about it is just it's like living history. Basically, he's just kind of going
Wow.
through it, and it's
That's
really,
awesome.
really cool.
That's
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping it would turn out as, and
yeah,
I'm really happy that resonates that
yeah.
way, because I felt like it was a special opportunity to crystallize
Mm.
what that team did through the eyes of a key player and through the eyes of all the guys, and even
Mm.
guys that aren't here are in the book in some
Right.
form. Mike Bossy, Clark Gillies, John Potvin, like Al Arbor, everyone's in there in some way. A story about them,
Mm.
quotes from them that I had from my original reporting along the way. I spoke to Claire Arbor at a memorial about how like everyone's in there
Mm.
to pay homage to these people that aren't quite here, but they're all here. So
Yeah.
it's and Herb Brooks too. His wife,
Yeah.
his daughter, his son, everyone is included. Is what my vision was, to make this as fully comprehensive a story, a reminiscence as possible.
Yeah, no, it's great. I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, and again, we can't thank you enough for giving us all your time. And it pertains to the sort of current Islanders. And I read the whole Islanders section. It wasn't mentioned at all. This might be a bit of a controversial topic, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway because I have
Okay.
you here.
Yeah, sure.
Ken Morrow has maybe the most famous beard in Islanders history.
Right.
He's worked for the Islanders for many, many years in the front office. How does the man with the most famous beard in Islanders history feel about working with a man who famously hates facial hair?
We never addressed that directly, so I don't know. And Kenny's
He is clean shaven now.
clean shaven now. He had the mustache for quite a while. I
Right.
know from just the past history, he was, I guess, something of a bit of a renegade, because he came in with the beard with
Right.
Herb Brooks, who didn't allow beards in a similar way, but let him keep it. Let him keep it because he came in with it, was the theory. So apparently Herb wanted him so much on the team, he wasn't going to argue with someone that had like a real beard for years kind of thing. So he that was the rule he kind of created. If you came with a beard, you can keep the beard.
That's funny.
And then with the Islanders, Al Arbor immediately started calling him Moses and then Wolfman.
I love that.
Be
Yeah.
part of it. So again, the beard, he came with it. Never, I guess, a thought to shave it. And then I think what happened was the Islanders, to some degree, adopted the beard playoff
Hmm.
thing because someone like Ken Morrow was there with a beard, and that's sort of when it started organically in those early '80s. You know, Clark Gillies growing the thicker beard, and Dennis Puff, and the beards came out. So I think he's a reason for that beard stuff in the early '80s. But today, different story.
Right.
I mean, well, what's amazing about Ken is he's worked for so many GMs. That
Right.
in and of itself is an amazing accomplishment, because who can say that really in any sport? Too, he's been a scout for them for 30 plus years. He's worked with all these different groups, ownerships, GMs. He gets along with everybody. It's another testament to his greatness to just do his job, focus, stay in it, and I'm sure Lou has the highest respect for a person like Ken Morrow, knowing Lou thrives on people that are dedication, perseverance, hard work, focus. That's his lifetime mantra. So I'm sure that's a very tight bond. But the beard, I have no comment on that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, he that it is. It must have been. I mean, it's not just the history of the dynasty, but it's hilarious that he's seen the Islanders go from a dynasty to almost extinct.
Right.
You know?
Right. Almost moved to
Right.
some of
Right.
his city where he, I mean, it's incomprehensible what they've been through since the early '90s to today. And today being the most stable ownership and leadership they've had, and some winning and some obviously really good teams. So he's seen them go all the way through, and what they've accomplished in the last 7-8 years has been extremely notable as well.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
Well, Allan Kreda, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Again, the book, Ken Morrow, Miracle Gold, 4 Stanley Cups, and a Lifetime of Islanders Hockey. Please tell everybody where they can get it, where you're going to be next. Again, you got this tour going on, and I'm sure it's been kind of a whirlwind for you too going on, and where everybody can find your writing too.
It's been fun. Well, I still cover the team for the Associated Press, so my stories are out there in digital land under the AP trademark there, and the book is the easiest way to get the book is just through Amazon or any bookseller online. That's the methodology of 2025. Book's doing very well out there, and we're hoping to do a few more signings in the area at some point, and maybe early next season. Then I've just been honored as a journalist to help a person like Ken Morrow share his story with the world. It's a legacy story that goes beyond hockey. It's a lifetime story of meaning, giving meaning to your career and your work ethic and your work, and how he pays tribute to his dad at every game he played when he stayed for the national anthem and thought of his dad. This is meaningful, and this is what life is all about. The way he lived his life and played his career and continues to devote his efforts to the Islanders is notable. Next year, it'll be 50 years in Islanders since he was drafted. So that in and of itself is worthy of a celebration night.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, no, they should. They should. Well, as thankful as you are to have written the book, we are thankful that you wrote the book because it's terrific. And thank you for reminding me to leave a review because I will. I got to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
coming on again. Become a
Absolutely.
member at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for ad-free episodes and bonus content. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, all the places. Please leave us a review where you can. Our theme song is Knuckles by Bjorn Falk. Listen to more of Bjorn's music on Bandcamp and on Spotify. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for your most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Islanders Anxiety podcasts are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Shop at VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Any final thoughts on the legacy of Ken Morrow, Alex McKendry, Hector Marini, or any of the other dynasty guys we've talked about today? We could talk about these guys for hours and hours and hours, but can you give us like one final thought on this whole thing that we've talked about?
I think what Allan said is perfect. That next year is his 50th anniversary as an Islander. Sounds like a good time to chuck that jersey up into the rafters and have a Ken Morrow night to throw some more appreciation to a career that, I don't know, man. It's Wayne Gretzky or he's not Gordie Howe, but I'm sure that those guys would look at his career and be like a little jealous.
Yeah, maybe. I think so. There's a lot
Four straight
of
cups. I mean, Gretzky didn't do that.
No,
Nope.
and he
Nope.
definitely did it with the
No.
beat the Soviets in the
Right.
craze, like the most important hockey game of all time. So it's I think he's in this weird kind of rarefied air, Ken
Yep.
Morrow, and he just would be the last person to tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. Which makes it all the more the reason to honor him.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Ken Morrow night next season, and let's throw in some giveaway beards. Just do
Sure.
that.
That would be
that would be amazing. What a photo op
really
that would be.
appropriate. Well, it does say the Wolfman on his plaque.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's right.
so that would be very fitting.
No better way to do that. Get on that, Islanders. Thank you again, Allan, for coming
You're
on.
welcome. This was fun.
Oh, I'm glad you had fun. We had a great time. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another great guest and another weird Islander. Until then, keep the Islanders weird. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.